Alrighty. Good morning. Good evening, guys. We've got Hans as speaker. How are you, Hans?
Good, thank you guys. How are you?
Good, good. And just watching everyone pile in here. So the agenda for today will be to go over again the app layer and also the switch assets and the rough sequence of plan from today over the next month. So just to give you a bit of background, PM's requested to speak, so I'll add him to co-host actually. Bit of background, so Kujira, 9 months ago, was a separate L1. Cosmos wasm running the fancy Cosmosm stack. Actually, Hans, why don't you give us a bit of background to the tech stack that to where Kujira was 9 months ago? Exactly what were you running, what apps were you running, etc.
Yeah, so we were I mean, it still is technically, I guess, a Cosmosm enabled chain, running a complete kind of DeFi suite of highly composable apps. And the nice thing about Cosmosm, to kind of just to get to technical weeds for a second, is that it kind of has isolation of actors inside its model, and so you can build things fairly fearlessly and fairly independently that don't affect the greater picture without explicit permission. And so we were running an order book, like completely decentralized, 100% fair execution onto an order book, borrowing and lending, which hooked into the order book with spot margin products, a stable coin, a launch pad, NFT marketplace in the pipeline, like all the kind of key DeFi components. But yeah, the thing that was lacking was the access to that layer one liquidity to the native BTC. And so yeah, back in August, this seemed like a kind of a partnership that was ordained in the stars almost.
Yeah, exactly. And conversely, blockchain had none of that. And instead, it had built a huge chunk of logic into its base layer. And this is not was part of the WASM stack. So Hans, why don't you just try and describe how ThorChain's base layer was different from Kujira's base layer versus your app layer? Like where did you split the logic between app layer and base layer at Kujira?
Kujira, there wasn't really a separation. At player and base layer was the same thing. You had this kind of our connection to the outside world was IBC and IBC only. Even integrating with the likes of Axelar, who had EVM compatibility, or with Wormhole, who had compatibility with Solana, etc. That initial point of contact was always IBC. So we were just dependent, and um, the only way we could connect to anything was through IBC. And so it was this kind of like, I mean, I don't know if you want to pick up from here, but yeah,
Yeah, so it's basically Kujira was a complete vanilla, unmodified base layer. Like it was just pulled off the warehouse shelf from Cosmosm GitHub, and you just went for it, did you?
that is basically it. We kind of had various kind of pillars of self sovereignty, of real yield, the same things that I think that you built Thorchain, and the Thorchain community holds dear, but with a complete massive difficulty to access liquidity and access that layer one liquidity.
Right. Okay. Cool. So that's the differentiation here. So Kujira was a stock standard vanilla Cosmosm latest version chain, and all of the DeFi functionality and apps were built in this app layer as smart contracts that lived in a different execution environment on top of the base, and you relied on the IBC connections to the wider world to import assets and then do fancy stuff with them, essentially. Whereas on the flip side, ThorChain predates, started in 2018, um, Cosmos Alpha software, so very older software, and it didn't have an app layer, and everything was done at the base layer, and everything was extremely highly modified. Everything from validated churning to uh, yeah, just the whole base layer was just this crazy custom beast to tackle Bitcoin, ETH, decentralized churning, no delegated proof of stake, etc. The NPC machine, etc. etc. So that was July last year. There was this Kujira with this crazy DeFi suite sitting on top of a vanilla base layer, and then Thorchain with no app layer with this highly modified base layer. And so the last 9 months, we've worked extremely hard to try and figure out how do you how do you transplant the two and bring them together so that the end result is, if we say, if we give ourselves 3 months to do this merge and deployment of these apps, so July this year, the end result will be Thorchain will be this modified Cosmos chain that can facilitate cross-chain liquidity at the base layer, Bitcoin, ETH, and all the nuances to do with that, but that has this vibrant app layer that lives on top that's able to essentially call into the base layer liquidity. Hans, would you agree that's like the 3 month vision to where we want to be?
Yeah, absolutely. The Thorchain provides a rails to be cross-chain settlement. Like if you think about like cross-chain liquidity is like a specific use case of settlement. But we've had teams approach us that want to do on and off ramping, or want to do gift cards or whatever, and they need settlement. It's not swaps; it's just settlement, and that is like 10 times easier or 100 times easier using Thorchain rails than it has been on any of the kind of vanilla Cosmos stacks, including ours.
Awesome. So that's the kind of 3 month vision, is to get to there. And that's the big differentiation between what's at the app layer and what's the base layer. Now, historically, Thorchain has tried to do DeFi, but at the base layer and only inside its own liquidity and inside its own assets. So this is the big shift to in launching this app layer. Thorchain is now and has for 12 months actually entertained the idea of bringing on assets, securing them in its system, and then essentially minting them into its app layer and letting people do things with them in the apps. So, Hans, do you want to give us like a 30-second overview of the life of a Bitcoin as it goes from L1 into Thorchain into the app layer to do something and then back out again?
Yeah, I mean it's super simple, right? It's the same as you would imagine things should be correctly done in a centralized exchange. You deposit into the exchange, that exchange says, right, I have 1 Bitcoin, now I'm allowed to do things with 1 Bitcoin inside my exchange. And there are plenty of exchanges that do now things with 2 or 5 or 10 Bitcoins because you've deposited one. Um, but in the Thorchain model, you deposit 1 Bitcoin, there is 1 Bitcoin represented that's minted inside the Thorchain app layer. You do what you like, and then you can withdraw it again. And it's as simple as that. But it is verifiable, it's transparent, it's decentralized, it's trustless. It's all the things that we're here for.
Yeah. Now, a couple weeks ago we had Space, and we threw out the idea that apps are just addresses that have code as a way to explain what these apps are. So do you want to elaborate on that? Like how, when we deploy a smart contract in the app layer, it actually has a Thorchain address. It looks like an address, but it's just got a bunch of code. So do you want to explain?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the only thing that a smart contract, so yeah, you can consider a smart contract to be exactly the same as as a wallet address that you generate yourself offline. Um, but a smart contract operates and is executed inside the same state execution logic. So it shares the transactions share the same mempool, but that is literally where it ends. The only way that a smart contract on Thorchain and the Thorchain app layer is allowed to do anything inside the Thorchain base layer, inside Thorchain core, is by emitting a message deposit. The same way that everything else happens, a swap, a deposit liquidity, a bond to a node operator, whatever. You do that all through a message deposit. And that's the only way that a smart contract address, the same as an EOA, is allowed to interact with a base layer. The difference is that because they share an execution environment or share a mempool, they're guaranteed to execute, and they're guaranteed to execute in the way that the code defines it. So you can suddenly start organizing, liquid stake bond providing, or order books on top of the base layer pools, or launch pads, or whatever it is, like all the apps that we're going to bring in that we're currently building out. But it is, yeah, you're right. It's kind of, it's a, it's, I think it's, you can think of a smart contract as almost like a more limited version of an EOA, right? An EOA can start an offline company somewhere and put some rules together and say, these are the things that we're going to do. this is how we're going to behave, but they might change how they behave. A smart contract can only do those things. It says, this is what I'm going to do, and this is only what I'm going to do. And it's been approved into existence through a chain upgrade, because you can only deploy the code that you've been approved to deploy. And that is now a very restricted version of an EOA. An EOA is actually a much more permissive entity than a smart contract.
Yeah. So just hanging on to that idea then that these apps are contracts, basically EOAs or addresses that have automated on-chain rules for how they function. So let's say, for example, a lending app. The rules are if you deposit 1 Bitcoin, someone can deposit 50,000 USDC and then borrow that 1 Bitcoin at some kind of interest rate, or some amount of the Bitcoin at some kind of interest rate. And so this app, this address that can do things, is just managing the reserve ratio and who pays who and unlocks the Bitcoin USDC at the correct time. But I can facilitate lending right here today in my house. You come to my house, you give me 1 Bitcoin, and then another person comes to my house and give me the USDC, and I will enforce the interest rates and I will enforce the solvency and the reserve rates, but and I follow my rules. But the smart contracts are just basically putting that all on chain, essentially. And to go a bit further, because we want to explore. So we've got the Thorchain's base layer with the secured assets. We've got the app layer, which are these addresses that do things. So do you want to give us a quick overview of let's say the next 6 apps that that the RUJI team would entertain deploying?
Okay, so the first couple will have trade, which is it's the order book. It's the order book that we actually, the first version of it was released in the fires of the terror implosion in 2022. It's 100% on chain. It's fair distribution. So most, quote unquote, fully on chain order books have some kind of off chain crank, which determines when a price hits an order price, who gets filled first, how much they get filled by, all that kind of stuff. So we have, to the best of my knowledge, the first and I think still only fully on chain crankless fair distribution. And then to get a little bit nerdy, O1 complexity fully on chain order book. So that will be launched along with a completely revamped market making product, which is pools, right? So you can be a dual LP, and there'll be more advanced strategies coming in the future. And then we'll have some perps courtesy of the Levana team. There will be launching borrowing, lending, a launch pad which will offer bonds, Dutch auction mechanism for like a fair launch mechanism that allows people to buy into tokens without being front run, without being sniped, without all this, whatever you want to call it, that we've seen on Solana and Pump Fund and all that kind of stuff. Bonds, all these kind of like these financial primitives that are just part of any sensible financial ecosystem will be coming to Ajira and accessible to everybody.
Awesome. So those are the rough kind of apps. If we were to have built that at the base layer, that's like a year's work, and that's like the entire dev team focusing on building DeFi at the base layer, and all that code is going to sit alongside critical vault code, churning code, liquidity code, and the amount of errors that could happen and security checks. I mean, that's why it takes so long to build at the base layer. But at the app layer, because if we say, hey, well, these apps can only do message deposit, message send, and just like a human can. So that's all I need. Let's just let them call message deposit, message send, let them do their things, and they just live in a completely separate execution environment, completely unlocked in bandwidth. Because rather than having one, even if we do 3 weekly release cadence at the base layer, and Chad's checking everyone, and 9 doing security checks on everyone, there's just like a really slow cadence. But at the app layer, once you essentially whitelist out the deploy addresses and smart contracts, we can scale over the next 12 months to having hundreds of apps, on a release cadence. So, Hans, what's likely the release cadence for apps and the processes required to get these apps downrange?
Yeah, so it's really important, obviously, that everything is voted in. There's kind of a security element that is not related to Thorchain initially, which is kind of vulnerabilities in the Cosmosm stack. Over the last, we've been doing this now for 4 years. Pretty much every single vulnerability there has just been a very niche case of somebody with a malicious smart contract who can exploit the issue. And so, as long as you have control over who is allowed to deploy and what they're allowed to deploy, you mitigate those. And so, having control over who's allowed to deploy and what they're allowed to deploy is key, right? And so those permissions are hard coded into the Thor node binary. But that said, it's important for, like you say, for the velocity of the app layer and all these smart contracts to be decoupled from the release velocity of the base layer and what Nine Realms and the core team are doing. And so we built a kind of a review process which allows somebody to basically look at the permissions that are being requested. There's a link in those permissions which is hard coded into the Thor node binary. You go to that link, you run a script which compiles the code that you're looking at. You can verify that the code at that commit produces a WASM file with a hash, like a checksum of a certain value, and it's that checksum which is provided permission to deploy onto the Thor chain. So, and you can then also in the same repository at that same commit see that there's been an audit, that the audit is for the same commit, and that they've given it the green light. So the level of requirement and responsibility for node operators and for base layer participants is significantly reduced. You know, like everybody should still be vigilant and still, you know, check things to the degree that they want to, but we have a process here that allows app layer with its complete logical separation, complete financial separation from the base layer to move and iterate quickly, but still, you know, go through the right procedures with the base layer.
Yeah, exactly. And so in summary, the developers will put up apps with a, you know, some kind of like view on usability and like some kind of security check, or being an audit, or that the node operators and baseline devs feel comfortable that deploying this app is not going to cause chaos and like hacks and stuff like that. And then it does pass some kind of like culture and vibe check, because we want, you know, the Thought Chain or the RUJI ecosystem wants to have high quality apps that all work well and are secure and all make sense. Like we don't want like 15 different versions of meme coin launch pads, right? So but like
Exactly.
one or two will do, you know. And by having this kind of one layer of like permissioning and checking off via the node operators, we can easily enforce a high quality filter on these apps that are going to be deployed. But also, if something did go wrong, we can give node operators ability to quickly pause a problematic app if it's, you know, blowing up and could cause damage, or is about to be hacked, or you know, security researchers come to us and say, hey, this app's got like 20 million in funds, but there's a P1 vulnerability. We're disclosing a bug, 10% bounce. Before the whole thing blows up, node operators can jump in, pause, upgrade the contracts, pay the bounty, and move on. Something like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, I mean, we have that exactly already built in. So node operators can pause individual contracts. They can pause entire versions of code, and they can pause the entire app layer should they feel the need to.
Yeah,
You know,
and
the
so
levers are there.
yeah, and the specific pausing is, well, as the same as already saying, 3 nodes can pause, 4 nodes can unpause, 5 nodes can pause, 6 nodes can unpause. So like, as long as not too contentious, you'd imagine that most of the you know, the couple of votes cast, like the 4, 5, 6, maybe 10, is enough to represent all of the node operators' interests, right? Else they would cast the vote as well. So, but also, we also want a culture of the node operators and base layer to let the RUJI flourish and the app layer flourish into what could be, and not to be too, you know, bothered about what's going on. As long as the app layer does message deposit, message send, and does fancy stuff on the app layer, then it's going to go just be fine, right? And
Mm.
one thing about that is the fee sharing. So do you want to discuss why we negotiated fee sharing and what we're starting off with in the direction there?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of stands to reason that are utilizing the Thorchain infrastructure. Node operators are securing the assets, and so there should be a reward paid. And so the approach there was a 50-50 split, where I was going to say where appropriate, but that's not, those aren't quite the right words. It's where the fee hasn't already been shared with the base layer. So where we basically, it's just a case of paying for security, so that these assets that are being deposited and secured and then utilized inside the app layer aren't just sitting dormant, right? Because there's no point, there's no value to be gained from somebody just taking $1 million of BTC and securing it and then just having it stuck there. Like, they don't want that, we don't want that. It's just not going to happen. So we're going to build apps that have a velocity of money that generate fees, and then those fees are they contribute to RUJI stakers, and they contribute to base layer security, and therefore to RUNE bond providers.
Yeah, exactly. So switching gears a bit, talk about the switch assets, why they were selected, where they're coming from, how they actually route over to Thorchain, what happens when they hit the chain, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so switch assets, you've got kind of two different types of switch assets here. I always get confused about the numbers here. I think there are 5. So that we have merge assets, switch assets that will become merged, and switch assets that are their own individual project that want to individually migrate over to Thorchain and then run their operations on top of the new app layer. And so we've got Kuji and RQG, which do several ones, Unstake, Wink, Fusion, and Levana, which are all merging into the RUJI token. RUJI will be the fee switch token of the app layer. We've then got, I think, 3 other projects, Auto, Nami, and Boon, which are individual projects which have either launched or are kind of pre-seed stage from the Kujira ecosystem, that obviously see the value in the Rujira app layer, see the value in the partnership with Thorchain, and have chosen to migrate their entire supply and encapsulate it inside Rujira, inside the Thorchain ecosystem. So it's a massive vote of confidence, I think, to have these kind of independent projects that were never part of that initial merge agreement involuntarily elect to come over. And these guys, they've been building already, and like what the Auto guys particularly have been building, it's just very cool. As far as the actual mechanism of it goes, obviously Thorchain doesn't observe Kujira, and so but we need to basically just allow somebody to transfer their own assets. So the mechanical process of it is you take your assets from Kujira, whichever one of these they are, you IBC them to the Cosmos Hub, to Gaia, and they have the IBC token reference denomination there, and then you can then and then those are now observed by Bifrost in the 3.4 update. All those tokens are now with their IBC denomination observed by Bifrost on Gaia, and you can deposit them, because they're all registered as switch assets. You can't do anything with them except try and switch them. If you try and switch them right now, it'll say no, the nodes haven't voted it in. And the view for this was that the switch handler isn't just for RUJI. It's not just for these assets. It's designed to be a way for Thorchain to attract any project from any chain it's connected to say, hey, I can see the value in moving my project, my ecosystem over into the Thorchain app layer. And so my first step is to have my assets whitelisted on Bifrost and observable. And the next step then is to have them approved by node operators. And at that point, instead of just saying we're going to approve them at height 1, we're going to approve them at height 30 million or whatever it is, like something that we're going to start the switch in 3 months' time. And it was kind of the architecture of this module. It wasn't just for RUJI. It was to allow Thorchain to benefit from any ecosystem, any other ecosystem wanting to migrate over, and so it was providing the flexibility of that kind of that moment to switch it on. And so that's what we're doing now is that switch on moment, but we're switching it on as soon as it was launched.
Yeah, and once these these assets move over, just take us through a bit more of those steps. So they hit the vaults. What happens
Right.
next?
Yeah. So they're observed by Bifrost. They're received by Thorchain. Thorchain then processes them inside its own state machine. Each switch asset has its own target address, and so the asset comes in, and then the only way that that deposit is confirmed is if the TX out is also coming. That TX out sends it to the address that is nominated as part of the pull request, as like like hard coded into Thor node. And for every single one of these assets, it is the Cosmos Hub 0 address. So if somebody wants to try and guess that private key, they can do that, but it's the same as the EVM null address. So you're not going to do it.
Yeah, awesome. And this is essentially enabled on all chains. So in a few months, once we move these assets over, and they can start building out the ecosystem around them. A couple projects I'm keen to move over is one is Voltisig. I think any Thor chain affiliate fee wrapper is just going to get so much more power and usability by managing the affiliate fees and the collection of them and the distribution of those, aka like staking contracts, directly on the app layer itself. So I for one are keen to move Voltisig over to RUJI app layer in a few months, and this will give us like precise control of affiliate fees, staking, distribution, and there's quite a few people hitting up ThorChain affiliates saying that if a ThorChain affiliate swaps quote unquote bad money according to someone else in the world, then they should be returning that money to the counterparty. And I took a stand and said absolutely no way, because the so-called quote unquote bad actors or whatever are only viewed by one group of people in the world to be bad. And like there are incentives upon layers of fees paid everywhere. Like if you make a transaction on Bitcoin, you pay Bitcoin miners, or if you settle on Ethereum, pay Ethereum block producers. So like why are you differentiating? Who are you differentiating? Returning and refunding? Like fees are fair and should be charged. And the best way to do it is to even just make this whole argument null and void, is to send all the affiliate fees, skip central processing, and stick them into a staking contract. And the only way you can get them out of the staking contract is by staking the token of that project. So shifting all of these projects to a pure decentralized cash back staking real yield tokens, I think makes total sense and be done right on the RUJI app layer. Cool. So switch up a little bit more. Pierre, PM, do you want to give us you're coming more from an ecosystem manager point of view, but do you want to give us your perspective on the switch assets and moving to the app layer and what's ahead?
Yeah, sure. So maybe a quick rundown on the various non core products moving to the app layer. So Hans mentioned actually 3 projects. There are 4. So first one is NAMI. We will be merging. What they are doing is effectively building the equivalent of savers for that. What savers was on Tor5. So they will provide effectively vaults, single-sided deposit vaults that automatically allocates funds. So if you have let's say a BTC, it will look at all the opportunities available inside the RUJI ecosystem and allocate funds to those, allowing you to have a yield that is not subject to impermanent loss. So that's one of the projects coming in. They are also helping us currently doing the work on Station, so Station wallets. The NAMI team stepped in to build this new, it's being adapted from Sonar, which used to be our mobile wallet in Kujira. This is going to become Station, and the NAMI team is helping there, leading the effort. So it's a great team, super helpful, and helping us build. They recently also onboarded another team, which was the Action team, who is now going to be part of NAMI. And they are also, so there's a great dev there called Matteo, who is helping us with the data layer. So building all the API to query data that will allow us to build some very good analytics for the ecosystem. So he's doing that. And he will also be the one building RUJI League, which will be this big competition that we will use to incentivize economic activity on the app layer, where everybody can just do whatever they want to do. on the app layer. Every time they pay a fee, effectively, they earn points. And then there is a leaderboard, and we will distribute periodic rewards once we start the RUJI League season. So that will be a big marketing push we do for the app layer once we are ready, and a very fun way for our community to use the apps and make money while using those. So that's one of those. Then the other one is Auto Rujira, another great team helping us a lot on different things. By the way, the Kujira team is, as you can see, we are an expanded team. Like we have the core team, which historically was just 3 people. But then we got all those other teams that are very close to us, that work with us, including into building this app layer on top of Torchain. So Auto team, what they are building is all sorts of automation solutions. For example, one of the first products they built on Kujira was an auto compounder that allows you to stack tokens that give you the reward and automatically collect the reward and restack it to grow your position. Now they are helping, they have been building the auto compounder for TCY. So everybody who was affected by TOFI blow up and that is a beneficiary of TCY will have the possibility to use their TCY, deposit those on the app layer into an auto compounder, and every day whenever they receive the RUNE reward, those will be automatically swapped for more TCY, and the position will compound over time. And they are also building the RUJI AI, which is a chat GPT-like interface for Rujira. It's already live for people who want to access the beta testing. It's very promising. It will allow you to, for people who don't want to interact with the apps directly, just go there and speak with a bot effectively, and do all sorts of things. And of course, the biggest part of what they are doing is then they are building those Lego pieces that are automated strategy to do all sorts of things, so that the AI agents that you speak with don't hallucinate and do random stuff, but do exactly what it's supposed to do inside a given strategy. So they're helping us with that as well. Super helpful team. Very grateful to have them around. Then the third one is the former Manta DAO. They are going to relaunch on Rujira as Liquidi, so they take the opportunity to do a rebranding. There is 2 parts of this business. One part, the biggest part, is really acting as a market maker. So they provide liquidity. They have a token who historically was yielding cash flow from another product, which was the multi-op router for RUJI, for Fin at the time. So now RUJI Trade, allowing you to swap any input token to any output token, and spreading between different routes to capture any arbitrage that they may be. They will try to rebuild that also on the app layer. By the way, there's a bit more complexity here because now we have Oracle orders. We change every block, so it has a bit of complexity, but we are going to find a way to tackle that. And that's then allow a very, it has a very helpful product for anybody who wants to integrate and do swaps very easily, optimized swaps. And then this yields a base level of cash flows, and this cash flow gives fundamental value to the token. Historically, on Rujira, this allow the DAO to raise a treasury, which is currently still worth around 1 million, net of some debt they still have to repay. And so this liquidity will be coming to the app layer and will be added to provide liquidity and help bootstrap the liquidity and the economic activity on the app layer, but also on the base layer. So MontaDAO has been buying some RUNEs historically and in the past few months. And they will be also providing liquidity with some of the RUJIs they will be merging, and act as one of the first big market maker for the RUJI RUNE pair, and stack that, and then use all this revenue from the market making activities and from the swap router to build more liquidity inside Rujira. So that's a third one. And here also we have one of the devs involved in MontaDAO called Jan, who's also super helpful and working with us, building the analytics alongside Matteo. So Matteo does the part with the API and collecting the data on chain, and Jan help us doing all the front end of that, the visualization of the data and all those things. And we are going to build something like a very, very, very nice and differentiated versus any other ecosystem. And then there is a Boon team, and they are a bit different. It's more like a traditional Web2 project, but applied to Web3, and they are acting more as a way, a marketing agency, kind of, allowing you to amplify certain type of content with a reward. They were launching just at the time where we signed the deal, and we made this first move to become the affiliate of TopChain, and they should be migrating alongside the rest of those projects. So that's for what is coming from the project migrating but not merging, and then we have, of course, all the other project merging. And if you want a bit more detail on the different product we'll be launching, very happy to dig into any of that.
Awesome. Thanks for that, PM. Now, in summary, over the last 36 minutes, we've gone over the QG stack where it was 9 months ago, the ThoughtChain stack where it was, and how the base layers were different, and how QG did all its code in a different execution environment that's being app layer. And then we discussed how we were going to bring the two beasts together and have ThoughtChain's base layer, which allows cross-chain liquidity rails with a vibrant and safe app layer ecosystem. We talked about the projects that are moving over and the mechanism for that via the switch handler, which nodes are voting on right now to essentially bring them into the ecosystem. And I do want to point out that was missed. The switch assets don't have any impact on security. They're not secured assets. As soon as they hit the vaults, they are burnt immediately, and they are minted as native ThoughtChain assets. And they're natively, and there's no way for them to ever leave the system again. Right? There's no, they switch in and forever commit themselves to ThoughtChain's base layer, and they can't get out again. So that's the biggest difference. Secured assets is the secured assets are not are managed by ThoughtChain in the vaults, and the nodes need to like churn them and migrate them and consolidate them, etc. But you can still leave and get back to you. So you can deposit Bitcoin, do things with it, and then leave again with your Bitcoin. Where a switch asset, it's a one-way street, one-way ticket into the protocol itself, never to get back out again. So that's why they have no impact on security. And this vote that's going downrange at the moment. Actually, does someone know how many votes are almost required to get them over the line? Mark, I know you've been keeping your eye on it.
We need 6 more.
6 more votes. Okay, so everyone today, just humbug your node operators and move and just campaign to get those last 6 votes, and let's get this across the line. So hopefully over the weekend, the merge and the migration can begin. The great migration will begin, but I'm pretty sure it's going to happen over the weekend.
The migration, I know we've been a bit coy about this, but whatever. The migration can start the second these votes pass. The merge contracts are deployed. The app layer is live on ThoughtChain. The UI is ready. It's just gated at the moment because you can't switch your assets right now. So the second the first one of those votes tips over, the merge starts.
Exciting. And then over the next few weeks, we're going to go through and start bringing up the main apps, putting them up to governance, getting them improved on chain, and away we go. And we've talked about them. Now, PM, do you want to? So there's 2 possibilities going ahead over the next 3 to 6 months. One is for the first 3 to 6 months, RUJI is going to tightly control the deployment of these apps because we just needed a really orderly process. We needed a set of culture. We needed a set of vibe. We need to assert precedents with a whole bunch of things, including fee sharing and audits and open source code. And so that's why RUJI is blazing the trail. Now, given after 3 to 6 months and everything's all fluid and in motion and ticking along, there's 2 ways to deploy an app on ThoughtChain. One is to go, the first one and the most obvious one is to join the RUJI Alliance. And PM, do you want to give us an overview, like why would an app join the RUJI Alliance versus just going it alone, rolling out an app and doing it themselves?
So we have a bit more nuanced view of the different type of apps and the different way to join and become an app on the app layer, actually. So in total, you can actually have 5 different categories. And there are projects. So the underlying idea here is if we really want to build this decentralized finance, we want to keep a certain coherence inside this ecosystem. As you were saying earlier, GP, we don't want a 15 different version of pump.fund that don't add any value. It's just like a fragment liquidity and cluster the chain for nothing. So the way we see the world is you will have 5 different buckets. The first one are what we call the value additive protocol on top of the core apps. So this includes most of the projects that I mentioned earlier that are migrating. So the NAMI, Auto, Rujira, MontaDAO. There are also a few more like RUJI Index, for example, which will be building index products with native assets on top of Torchain with the app layer. All those projects, they come and they build the core primitives, which already have a fee sharing with Torchain with the base layer. So it's a very attractive proposition for those builders because suddenly building on the app layer, it means that they can access native assets. For example, for the index product, that's the only place where they will be able to create an index that has BTC, ETH, and Sol at the same time using native assets secured by Torchain. So quite a good proposition. They can also tap in this 120 million plus base layer liquidity. So quite a nice proposition. And those projects, because they are built on top of the core apps, they will be doing trade on RUJI Trade or providing liquidity on RUJI pools or doing all sorts of things on those core apps, which are already sharing their fees with the app layers. That means that they already pay by the fees they pay to those core apps. They pay for security on the app layer. So they can keep 100% of their revenue. And those apps, we actually don't want them to join the RUJI Alliance. We encourage them that they can have their own economic models. They can have their own token. And we will have, of course, one of the products we will have is a launchpad. And so we want this launchpad to be used. We want to foster a big economic activity. We want a lot of projects to come, launch token, raise capital, and create markets on RUJI Trade and create a ton of economic activity and generate fees for both RUJI stackers and the base layer. And so for that, those projects perfectly fit for a launch on the launchpad. So their way to access capital will be to then launch a token. Of course, the project migrating already have a token. But any new project that want to join will be encouraged to launch a token and fund this way. And then they can keep 100% of their revenue. They will be able to spin out a DAO super easily with DAO, reuse the revenue converter contract, and have all the tools to effectively have a great end-to-end experience for builders to just launch a project, launch a token, seed liquidity on RUJI pools, and have a DAO and a secured infrastructure to manage all the project transparently, and eventually will even provide analytics to provide real-time accounting very easily for all those projects. So a lot of very cool stuff that you can only do, will be only able to do on the app layer. So that's the category of project I think we want to attract the most. For example, one project that will be very cool that we don't have yet would be a project that builds custom market making strategy on top of RUJI trades. So we will have our own market making strategy with RUJI pool, but there are probably people that have experience in that can do a better job or a different job than us. And the more market making strategy we have, the more liquidity there will be in the order book, and the more volume we can facilitate and fee we can generate for the app layer. So that's an example of another project come here, but you can build all sorts of things that use those core apps, and you will be welcome in this category. Second,
the one, the main thing the point that I want to get across is, if you join the RUJI Alliance, you're going to access funding, shared UI, shared market, marketing, and a shared community that's immediately deployable. And some of the stuff we discussed, PM, is things like bringing on developers, giving them 20, 30 grand grants or plus or minus, get them started, get them onto RUJI apps, get them making fees and get them fee sharing. And then for the RUJI Alliance, there's a bucket of incentives that just looks at fees earned on a quarterly basis and pays developers on a boost to that, and some kind of like fair boost. So developers can see the incentives are clear. get
Okay.
a grant, just get started, get access to share community, and then get even more boost of incentives along the way. So we hope that the RUJI Alliance is going to be this kind of like collective and force for good that's going to set high standards. It's going to like put up the auditing costs, and we'll have a streamlined auditing. So at least if you join the RUJI Alliance with the app, we will help you cover the auditing costs, cover the governance process and everything. So that would probably be the main collection of apps, just because the incentives are great in RUJI, the funding's there, and the quality's there. But there's also ability to do it your own way. So as PM was talking about, if you don't want to be part of the RUJI Alliance, but you want to be like loosely, you want to run your own front end, run your own middleware, etc., do your own governance process, and launch your own token or whatever, then that's totally cool and totally fun as well. We anticipate that the checks on, like having like stopping like 15 different types of pub funds is going to happen at the governance process. So node operators are not going to let 15, lending protocols be launched or 15 pools, because it's just silly. It's just all fragmentation. So that's how it will. That's how we vision it's going to go down range. I want to be clear that go.
Yeah, what that was going to be the second bucket, but I think there is a big difference here. So the first bucket I mentioned built on top of the existing apps. So there is also an incentive for the app layer to keep those independent, to foster this economic activity with different tokens. And also there is this constraint that a lot of those projects are migrating and already have a token, and so we cannot merge them into the alliance. But then there is the second key strategic bucket, which is for differentiated yet strategic apps. And that's exactly the one that we want to join the RUJI Alliance. So anything that we consider key, but we don't have yet in our roadmap. So something, for example, like a tokenization of yields, a bundle protocol type of thing, we don't have that, or some real world asset project where trees that will probably be in a different bucket. But tokenization of yield, I think it's a cool one. We could have that as a new vertical, and that would be part of the alliance. Anything that is new and that we don't have in the roadmap will be there, and then we can have also grants. Actually, we can give grants to any of the first two buckets. That's all fine, and help with audits as we see fit. So it's all working. But I think those are the two things really that we want to attract. Either people who build on top of the existing app and will be doing their own marketing, and they may also as well integrate inside the main RUJI app. It's not because they have a different token that they can't integrate. As long as they use the core apps, they generate fees for everybody, and it's great. Or we have those new verticals that become part of the RUJI Alliance, won't have their own tokens, but and will be paying their revenue 100% to base layer plus RUJI stackers, split 50-50. Those are the two ones.
I want to, Pierre, sorry, I want to change gears a bit and touch base on security. So a couple of questions I've got into my inbox are, is the app layer dangerous for the base layer? So there's probably like, and I'll switch back to Hans here, there's probably two levels of security that we're contemplating, or three. One is, can an app, which is just an address to do things, cause so much damage to the base layer that could be bad? So one kind of app that might be a candidate for this is a RUNE denominated collateral lending vault. And so that is like people deposit RUNE, borrow against it to mint a stable coin. And then because there's so many RUNE holders in the community and ThoughtJets, everyone uses it. Next thing you know, there's 100 million RUNE in this single app. And there's like, hundreds of millions of stable coins out there. And then something goes really bad and the whole thing blows up. So Hans, do you agree that this is probably a dangerous app, and this is what everyone's talking about?
I think that there's no direct systemic risk to the base layer in that the app can't release funds that it's not allowed to release, and it can't drain pools that it's not allowed to drain, all that kind of stuff. But yes, I think the way that a smart contract is allowed to aggregate and organize funds, if left unchecked, and let's be honest here right now, this is why we're all here, or that's why we're all here, is that back in August, this got very lopsided on Kujira, because it was left unchecked, and it was the fact that smart contracts were allowed to collect too much of one token without enough checks that the way that they were managing the solvency of those funds was there. And so we are acutely aware of this. It is something that we, if not right now, we should have lots of very public conversations about, understanding how we manage these types of kind of systemic risks that you might be able to generate through aggregating funds and creating basically leverage, right? Any kind of leverage. But
Yeah, so
one of the
it
kind
really
of
comes down to collateral. So I guess we could say that RUNE collateral, LP units collateral, or bond units as collateral could create systemic risk funds. Whereas
yeah, I mean
taking
all of them.
Bitcoin, yeah,
You
go
just
ahead.
need to the hardest thing, right, is so the number one thing is that you create constraints, and this is kind of was part of the refreshed mantra going forward since August, was that anything like this where we have leverage, there will be like dynamic limits, limits that can be specified based on known liquidity, um, which is over constraining in its initial principle, right? Because okay, fine, if you're just dealing with liquidity that you only have inside your ecosystem, fine, you know how much you can liquidate across it. But for like Bitcoin, like you're about to say there, you have no idea like what how much the wider market can absorb. But better to be safe than sorry, right? And so these are discussions that should be had. These are very key factors and configuration elements of the protocols that we'll launch as and when we get onto these kind of margin and leverage and borrowing and lending protocols.
Yeah, so um, I guess for the stablecoin we have planned for RUJI, that is likely to be a MakerDAO CDP protocol. So people will be depositing Bitcoin, ETH, Doge, and then minting a stablecoin against that. So it'll be like a mixed bag MakerDAO CDP system. There will be liquidations at certain collateralization ratios, and there'll be fees charged, etc. But why wouldn't this create a systemic, or why do we believe this wouldn't create a systemic risk to Thorchain and is not a dangerous app, even though it's contemplating a stablecoin?
Well, it's the same model, right? Like it's whatever the collateral is, and so you wouldn't you know, I think it'd be a very bad idea to create a stablecoin backed against RUNE, even if it's not an algorithmic one. You don't want that kind of endogenous risk where the kind of subsequent death spiral. And so this is all. Yeah, it's funny, right? We've all been through. I think there's a lot of people in the share communities that have been through a lot of these kind of lunar and whatever kind of spirals, and have become much more informed on it, so we can have a much more sensible discussion about these kind of things.
Yeah. So interestingly, Maya protocol could create a MakerDAO CDP position and take RUNE as collateral, but it shouldn't do its own token. And Thorchain could take Maya coin as collateral in its mixed bag, but it's not its own. So that's kind of like, all right, well, let's stay away from the, we're about just highly functional apps that make fees that work all the time, right? So avoiding leverage, avoiding the leverage loops is going to be a key component of how our culture and as we roll this out.
I think leverage is an organic part of this space, organic part of any kind of financial system, right? So I mean, it's a critical part of any financial system, but we can't let it be unchecked. And so it's critical that the way that we build it and the way we design it and the way that it's managed from here on out is dynamic and it's sensible and it's constrained.
Yeah, exactly. So okay, so there's apps that could be dangerous or systemic based on accepting various collateral and liquidity. So there's these more economically risky apps, and that will be very clear. And like, there's nothing planned in the RUJI apps that involve taking like RUNE collateral and looping that up and blah blah blah. And so that will be the a no-go zone.
Yeah, there's nothing here like we were saying about. So just one last comment that like we were saying about how smart contracts are just hard-coded versions of EOAs. There's nothing here that a centralized exchange or a jump or whatever couldn't do. Like they can take the same positions and collect the same amount of collateral and have the same kind of reflexivity.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Yeah.
just really
So there's economically risky apps, and we will like navigate that and discuss that with governance and avoid obviously risky collateral. Then there is, because these smart contracts are only really doing message deposit, message send. we've confined them in what they can do so already to what a human can do today. So we don't think there's any. We're not adding extra risk there. There's no IBC contemplated yet. We still haven't worked out how to really use that. Although in the future, I can see how we can use IBC as a token factory out. So if we do have a stablecoin from a mixed bag CDP like position, we can wire out that stablecoin across the IBC, get it to Solana, EVM chains, etc. So that's like the future version of IBC. As lastly, there's like the code risk, and that's why we have an experienced team who are just porting their already existing, already live apps with some few tweaks into Thorchain, passing an audit, passing governance. So from the start, the whole vision for this was, could we debut a high quality, well coordinated, well funded app layer onto Thorchain, which has never had one before, and do it in a way that makes sense and everyone wins. And I think it's been a lot of work, Hans and the team, to even get here today and consistently show up to work for the last 9 months and keep building. And there's been a lot of chaos and drama, blah blah. But that's just crypto. There's always chaos and drama. But I'm extremely bullish, and we've got some people. We've got Mark and Hans and PM here. But like, what's your outlook? And you go around each turn. What does the roadmap for the next 4 years look like, and how much is your mind blown when you think about it?
Do you know what? I told you this before. My mind got blown. I think it was like a month or two after we started this, and it was like kind of like that early peek under the curtain when I started writing or just like, I mean, it was just like cloning Chad's trade asset code and modifying it slightly for secured assets, and suddenly you get to write base layer code that interacts with any other layer one, and it was just this kind of, it had been this eternal struggle for us at Kujira for years that we just couldn't access these assets that we wanted to integrate and bring the liquidity over for all these products we were building, and it was just there right at my fingertips. And kind of at that point I saw that kind of like that thread unravel like the months ahead, as like, we were going to do this, and then we're going to do the Cosmos, and then it's going to be a bank token, and then we are going to and I could just see how this is suddenly going to become this, right? And it's a meme. It's not a meme anymore, actually, frankly, a competitor to the centralized exchanges, because you have exactly the same experience where you can just deposit from your layer one. You deposit your Bitcoin, you deposit your ETH, you deposit your Sol, you do your things with it, you earn your yield on it, you LP with it, you trade it, whatever you do with it, and then you withdraw it back, and then you carry on with whatever that layer one is good at doing, and you crack on there. It sounds cliche, but it's a 0 to 1 moment.
Awesome. Mark, what's your perspective? How much is your mind blown for what we're going to do in the next 4 years? Mark, you can unmute. Sorry, I'll make you speaker, actually. And Pierre, what's your view on the next 4 years and what we're going to ship?
Yeah, so next 4 years, I think. So super excited about this omni-chain thing, as Hans was describing, the fact that you can connect any wallet from any connected chain and trigger action on the app layers is quite mind-blowing. And the view is we are going to first roll out our core apps, and then we need to build some very good differentiated market making strategy for RUJI pools. And then we are going to start to scale with an affiliate fee model that is similar to what has been very successfully implemented by Thorchain, so allowing people to add fees on top of the core apps. And we're going to start to try to grow and attract also institutional capital from all those ecosystems, because now for the first time, either it's ecosystem like Bitcoin or other ecosystem that did not have smart contract but can now access an app layer. This is massive, and allow any asset manager that do on-chain asset management to actually do that with native assets all in one place, and with strategy that will hopefully be making very decent returns without taking any of the third-party custody or bridge risk. So that's super exciting. And I think eventually the longer-term vision is we're also building the toolings. I put, given my background, a lot of emphasis on analytics. I think we'll have like very good analytics, very differentiated. And eventually you want to have this infrastructure also that allows any project to launch super easily and to have like automated accounting and all those things. And the next step, because you mentioned the next 4 years, is eventually crypto can only win if we would buy on crypto. So it's all great what we have been doing with just like crypto apps and crypto builders, and that's how we should start and where should we should focus for now. But longer term, what we want is to onboard the next generation of entrepreneurs that decide to come to Rojira and to build a real world business, but decide to do that using blockchain rail because it's cheaper, because it's more convenient, because it gives them access to capital rails, real-time accounting, and all those tools to do that in a very easy and very more cost-effective ways than if they were to start traditional business. And I think that's eventually where we want to go. We want to really become this cross-chain financial hub, not just for cross-chain activity, but for the entire world. That's where we want to go.
Awesome. And I share the same thing. My view is ThoughtChain becomes basically this app layer for any connected chain. So if it's got 20 connected chains, you can deploy a single app. It might be a lending app, might be a ventures app, might be an OTC app or whatever, a gambling app, a sports betting app, and you can accept collateral, L1 collateral from 20 different chains in one transaction and then start working immediately. So you can roll out like a betting app, accept Bitcoin like an on-chain casino using ThoughtChain entry generator, state machine to make your betting possible, but merely accept collateral from like 20 different chains and get going. One deployment, 20 chains. Let's go. Yeah, so that's my vision. All right, we've got an additional speaker, Dan. Jump up with your question.
Hello, guys. My pleasure to be here. Yeah, I was exactly. My question was about actually that just what GP just started to talk about because we are actually building an online casino. I am working in iGaming and I have all the top tier partnerships and I have lots of connections. And my question is that right now we're looking for options where to launch the business. We have a development team ready. We can probably make something in 4 or 5 months. And the question is that how could we possibly deploy something on the Torchain app layer? Like how would the procedure actually look like if we start development and we would do something on it?
Sure. So you would jump in. You would first decide whether you wanted to do it as part of the RUJI brand or do your own spin off and collect your own fees. If you do it your own, then that's slightly separate. But if you do it with RUJI, we will give you a grant, would give you a process. We would have a developer sit by you and guide you through the process, and it'll be much more accelerated. We would underwrite your auditing costs. We would help you get through governance and deploy. So you're looking at accelerated deployment if you go through RUJI and funded, because we would be investing in your app with the idea that if your app makes cash flow and fees, it would be returned to the whole RUJI. But if you want to do it your own, have your own token, have your own staking contract, your own investors, etc., that's also totally cool. We would say, hey, and refer you to a more generic process, but that involves step one, deploy all your code in a staging environment, and there's going to be like a devnet, a StageNet where you can like test your code out and develop your interface. Get it audited at some point. It should be enough to get audited, and then you would then bring that through the ThoughtChain base layer devs for review, and they would do a first pass check on it. And it's probably going to be a monthly thing. So I'll work with the base layer devs that perhaps on the first week of every month, everyone who wants to submit an app on the app layer puts up a submission, probably on a GitHub that includes link to the code, link to the audit, link to the one pager, link to the website, some kind of like pulse check, vibe check. And then I would imagine that once a month, high quality apps that look differentiated, have had security checks, don't create any systemic risk, would then be whitelisted for deployment, and then go from there. So it's probably going to be a monthly pulse check, a monthly like app check process, which we're going to like flesh out over the next 3 to 6 months, and then away you go. You're going to deploy it. So does that answer your question?
Yes, I think it actually makes a lot of sense. Well, we are very open to have a discussion. We are very confident that what we can bring is actually very innovative and very enjoyable. So yeah, if you can link me up with any of the developers, then I can have a talk with them to let to he can check my background, check what we do, and how can we actually make a match.
Exactly. All right. Well, do you want to DM either Pragmatic Monkey here or Mark on Twitter, and they can take you into a Telegram group and go from there. But I'm definitely keen to see someone build an on-chain casino properly, because you can accept collateral from many different chains. You would have proper random number generation, and the reason why I say it is because Thorchain is essentially can source its entropy outside the chain. So in every other chain or smart contract, you can only source entropy inside its own environment, which can be completely manipulated. But because Thorchain reads from Bitcoin, you can literally just get the entropy from the latest Bitcoin blocks. So so it's quite exciting to see someone actually do that.
Yeah, I'm quite excited to see how others would perceive it. Well, regarding the random number generator, so our vision is that we would have in-house games, and those would run in-house, and that we can apply the Thorchain source, the random number generator. I think that would be also something that the community would love to see how it can be utilized. But other than that, we are also working with the top tier aggregators to supply the casino with the newest and the hottest games that generate the most revenues, and they have their own system. But anyway, and I will text to
Awesome.
Pragmatic and then Mark, and then I will let them know about anything, and all their questions will be sufficiently answered.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks very much. And I do want to highlight that an on-chain casino would never have been entertained in the old Thorchain. You just would never be able to like get the code through the base layer. So now that we have Thorchain has an app layer, we can have 100 different style apps, whatever you want, as long as it's not too crazy and it's can draw fees. Let's get it on the Thorchain app layer and see what happens. I got to jump off. Big thanks to Hans, Mark, PM from the team for helping me host the space. And I'll catch you guys on the timeline. We'll talk soon.